Good morning, and what a jazzy way to start the day.
Right.
I am Amy Firestein, your lay liturgist this morning, and I have to say I just can't believe we're already midway through October. Where does the time go? But I am happy to be here with you today, sharing leadership of today's service with Reverend Dr. Sandra. We welcome you to celebrate in the transformative power of religious community, whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg. We have an in-person coffee hour after service in the common room downstairs, and we hope that you will join us, even if it's for a few moments. For those joining online this morning, we do invite you to participate in the Zoom coffee hour. The link was provided in the email with today's service links. Online or in person, we're glad you're here. Please rise in body and spirit and join us in our opening hymn.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew.
Our Unitarian heritage bids us light our chalice. We gather in community to celebrate a heritage of freedom, reason, and tolerance. Our Universalist heritage bids us light our chalice. We gather in community to celebrate a heritage of faith, hope, and love. Let us bring this Unitarian Universalist heritage into our world and our lives today.
his autobiography, Theodore Parker relates that as a child, 4 or 5 years old, living on a farm in Roxbury, he is walking through the fields one day, absent-mindedly swinging a stick through the tall grass. This was many years ago, in the days before the Civil War. It was summertime. He stopped to watch the water bubbling along a creek. Then he noticed a turtle sunning itself on a rock. He'd seen other boys use their sticks to strike at turtles and other animals. It was part of what children thought of as fun, just as some children still like to bully and hit those who are weaker than themselves. Often children and grown-ups, too, are copycats, mimicking the behavior of others who seem bigger or stronger than themselves. Young Theodore wanted to be like the other older boys he'd seen, so he raised his stick into the air, taking aim and preparing to knock the turtle into the water. But something stopped him. Something seemed wrong about the situation. He looked again at the turtle, quiet, peaceful, enjoying the summer day, just as he liked to feel the warmth and light of the sun. Had the turtle ever done him any harm? Was the turtle so different than himself? Slowly, he lowered his stick and walked home, thinking about what had happened. When he arrived home, his mother was there to greet him, and he told her about the incident. She listened carefully to Theodore, and listened especially carefully when he related how some strange force inside him had stopped him from hitting the little animal. "Theodore," she said, "that force inside you was the voice of conscience. Always pay attention to it. Always follow what your conscience tells you. It's your moral compass that points you in the right direction. And if you honor your conscience, you'll never go wrong in this world." Theodore Parker grew up to become a Unitarian minister. In fact, one of the greatest leaders our faith has ever known. He became a champion of the defenseless who needed defending. He was a hero in the fight to end slavery in our country. He prayed to Father and Mother God and fought for women's equality and their right to vote. He and his wife never had children of their own, but he felt a sense of kinship with the whole family of creation, people of all sexes and races who had been made in the image of the holy. And it all started one summer day when he was just a child who saw a turtle and decided to do what was right. And now we will sing our children down to class. Just stayed up at the podium, but I didn't want you to hear me sing. I'm going to read you The Great End in Religious Instruction by William Ellery Channing. The great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon the young, but to stir up their own. Not to make them see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own. Not to give them a definite amount of knowledge, but to inspire a fervent love of truth. Not to form an outward regularity, but to touch inward springs. Not to bind them by ineradicable prejudices to our particular sect of peculiar notions, but to prepare them for impartial, conscious judging of whatever subjects may be offered to their decision. Not to burden the memory, but to quicken and strengthen the power of thought. not to impose religion upon them in the form of arbitrary rules, but to awaken the conscious, the moral discernment. In a word, the great end is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life.
What is awakening in your soul this morning? What is breaking through to invite your attention? What joys and sorrows are touching your life? In this time now of prayer and meditation, you're invited to share your joys and sorrows. You may share them in quiet contemplation. You may write a card at the back of the sanctuary, and if online, you may write them in the chat. And those on site may also come forward and drop a stone into our common bowl to give expression to your joys and sorrows. I share now two sorrows. First, from J.D. Stillwater, who is mourning the unexpected loss of Michael Dowd, author of Thank God for Evolution. He spoke here several times and was a friend to this congregation and to many Unitarian Universalist congregations, I would add. And from Nan and Jim Kavanaugh, who are joining us online this morning. They are recovering from colds they caught from their grandchildren last week. They were glad they could be with them for a very intense bit of caring for 5 and 8-year-olds. That is what falls into the category of a blessing and a mild sorrow for their illness, right? Let us hold these joys and sorrows, what has been spoken and what remains silent in our hearts in compassion and care. Let us hold them in a moment of silence. This morning, I invite you to continue in a spirit of prayer with words from Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. She wrote these words regarding the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Beloveds, I invite you to stop what you are doing, if you can, and sit with me in the depth of this tragedy. I pray for the people of Israel and Palestine. I pray for leaders around the globe who must respond to this latest flare of violence and the untenable ethical considerations that abound. I pray for Muslim and Jewish, Unitarian Universalists who experience the impact of this long strife acutely. I pray that those of us less likely to know the trauma of unending brutality and harm will not turn away from generational loss, from the devastating realities and their root causes, or from the relentless tragedy of war and occupation. Be gentle with yourselves when you need to be, but do not turn away unless you must. We are one global family, living tenuously on the same human-impacted earth. Let us center ourselves in justice as we call for peace. Amen. Blessed be. And let us center ourselves in stillness now.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find a silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the spirit, quiet still, with the spirit living power, I will find in the one only. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the spirit, by the spirit, with the spirit living power, I will find you
I'd like everybody to open their gray hymnals to the back to the responsive readings, number 531, The Oversoul, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I'd like for you to read the italicized words as we get there. Let us learn the revelation of all nature and thought, that the highest dwells within us, that the sources of nature are in our own minds. As there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so there is no bar or wall in the soul where we, the effect, cease, and God, the cause, begins. I am constrained every moment to acknowledge a higher origin for events than the will I call mine. There is a deep power in which we exist and whose beatitude is accessible to us. Every moment when the individual feels invaded by its memorable, it comes to the lowly and simple. It comes to whosoever will put off what is foreign and proud. It comes as insight. It comes as serenity and grandeur. The soul's health consists in the fullness of its reception. Forever and ever, the influx of this better and more universal self is new and unsearchable. Within us is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. When it breaks through our intellect, it is genius. When it breathes through our will, it is virtue. When it flows through our affections, it is love.
Before being here as your minister for 18 years, I served in a historically Universalist congregation. Before that, I was a ministerial intern at an historically Unitarian congregation, and before that, I was a member here at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg, an historically Unitarian congregation. So I feel connected to both of these streams of our religion, to both Universalism and Unitarianism. And this morning, I want to honor our Unitarian heritage. Last Sunday, Reverend Dr. Kathy Ellis spoke about the heritage of Universalism. There's a saying that helps get to the core tenets of Unitarianism and also Universalism. The saying is attributed to Thomas Starr King, who served both movements. Some of you may have heard this before. When asked the difference between Unitarianism and Universalism, he said, "The Universalists think God is too good to damn them forever. The Unitarians think they are too good to be damned forever." There's humor, a little edge, and some truth to this saying. The Universalists had confidence in a God who was loving and good and would never damn people to eternal hell. The Unitarians stressed a positive view of human nature. They had confidence in human growth and character, and they rejected the ideas of human depravity and original sin. Sometimes the Unitarian assessment was a bit lofty and overly positive. It was sometimes strident. Nevertheless, this tenet is deeply rooted in Unitarianism. It sets Unitarians apart historically, and it continues to influence you today. And I want to speak about the positive ways that it has come down to us. in contemporary life. The Unitarians' elevated view of human nature was a heresy. It was a Christian heresy. And that word heresy, sometimes Unitarian Universalists like to claim that idea that we're heretics. That word just means choice. And for the Unitarians and also for the Universalists, they were making theological choices that were in conflict or in disagreement with Orthodox Christian beliefs. That was bold and troublesome. It would lead to both Unitarians and Universalists becoming separate denominations from Christianity. The Unitarians, as I said, put a lot of trust in human capacity. They trusted in the human ability to grow their character. Does it seem odd to you that this should be a heresy? It strikes me, as a contemporary person, that this doesn't seem all that unusual, at least not maybe for Unitarians. So how was this a conflict? Well, David Robinson explains it this way. He said that it was a heresy because it reversed the central belief of the Calvinists, that human nature was inevitably corrupt, and replaced it with the assumption that each individual had the innate potential for spiritual awareness and benevolent action. This potential, however, he said, had to be carefully protected and encouraged. And the chief aim of life was to cultivate the growth of the soul. The idea of the religious life as one of continuing growth and development, he said, became the defining tenet of the liberal movement in theology, which came to be known as Unitarian. So it reversed this idea of human nature as positive. It reversed the prevailing belief of the time in human depravity and focused instead on human capability. In our reading earlier this morning, you heard William Ellery Channing describe the idea of the religious life as one of continuing growth and education. He said the great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon the young, but to stir up their own. Well, it isn't just the young whose minds should not be stamped, right? It's all of us. The point of religious education is, from the Unitarian perspective and history, the point of religious education is to stir our minds. The point is not to indoctrinate or be indoctrinated, but to enlighten and be enlightened. Humans can be trusted, said the Unitarians, to have their own experience of God and truth. Channing insisted we don't come into religious community to stamp our minds, but to open them. This all sounds to us just like the way it is, right? And it wasn't always so. We come to open to curiosity, to open to learning, to open to exploration, to awaken the conscience. And as Channing said, the purpose is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life. The purpose is not to save us from our depraved, sinful origins, or to save us from eternal damnation or hellfire. Instead, Channing believed in that potential of every individual. He was preaching in the early 19th century. And he preached that we can each discern truth and act as moral agents. Well, what gives us this authority? What gives us this ability to discern truth, to experience God? Well, Channing said this ability was God-given. We each, he said, have divinity within us. Sounds familiar, right? So, because we have divinity within, we can draw upon that divinity. We can draw upon it for moral guidance if we tap into it. So Channing describes it this way, and you've heard some readings this morning from Channing and Emerson, and some of the language of these folks is really a little foreign to us today. We don't hear those words, some of these words in readings much anymore, unless you're in literature programs or studying philosophy. But Channing describes this idea of divinity within this way. He says, the divinity within us makes us more and more partakers of the moral perfection of the Supreme Being. For Channing, religious instruction helps us cultivate character. It helps us tap into the divine, into the moral perfection of the Supreme Being. This approach has had a significant influence on the way that our UU communities today offer religious education. I certainly wish that my religious instruction as a child at church had emphasized Channing's approach. I was taught the Bible stories in very conventional and literal ways. Were any of you? I was taught what to believe, not how to cultivate a life of faith. I knew what I was expected to believe, but I did not believe it. It defied my sense of reason, my sense of curiosity, and my experience of the divine. As a youth and young adult, I turned to literature to satisfy my spiritual longings. Little did I know that among the literary figures who were helping me in my spiritual journey were the Unitarians. What a thrill it was to find Unitarian Universalism here as an adult and discover literary luminaries on the pages of our hymnal. Among them, Emerson. Emerson was a youth when Channing was preaching. Emerson would eventually take the tenets of Channing and run wild with them. In 1838, we're still kind of way back there historically, right? In 1838, Emerson delivered an address to the senior class at Harvard Divinity School. He preached that each generation must renew the life of religion. Each generation, he said, must have a revelation of its own. New generations, he said, could not rely entirely on the past. We each must have our own experience of the divine. Emerson insisted that a minister's responsibility, and Emerson was a Unitarian minister, he said a minister's responsibility is to help people look within for that revelation, for that guidance. And he said, we can each behold God and nature face to face. We can each have an original relation to the universe. Each of us can have transformative religious experiences of connection, wonder, and oneness. Like Channing, Emerson's ideas were outside the mainstream of religion. Only Emerson's were seen as radical within Unitarianism. And remember that the Unitarians were already outside the mainstream. So, Emerson was really out there for them. But ultimately, and this was a great conflict, ultimately the Unitarians made space for Emerson's ideas. Why does this matter? Well, today Emerson's beliefs are reflected in our first UU source. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which move us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces that create and uphold life. This sixth source speaks poignantly to our desire for an original relation to the universe. It expresses the spiritual longing for transformative moments of wonder and awe. And I have to tell you, I had one of those this morning. They don't come in every moment and every day, but I had one this morning. I was driving here. I drive about an hour here from Reading. I came on the turnpike, and just as I was getting toward the Harrisburg Exchange, there's a rainbow. Some of you see it? Yes. All right. So I saw the rainbow, this arch. I was like, wow. I'm driving, right? So I'm sort of, So, wow. And it was really magnificent. I mean, it was just stunning. The colors, it was just bigger than I'd ever seen a rainbow. I felt like I was driving toward this rainbow. I was going to, be within it. But then I turned the corner, and the whole rainbow, beginning to end. That is a transforming moment. For me, that's a mystical moment, an experience of God, of cosmos, a profound and poignant moment. And sometimes people talk about how these experiences, that what Emerson was describing was individualistic and self-serving. I assure you, those moments are not self-serving. Those moments are not for ourselves alone. Those moments connect the divine in us to the divine out in the world, in all of creation. They connect us with each other. What does it feel like when we get to be in a space? How many of you saw the rainbow this morning? Oh, the choir got to see it. See? You'll need to join the choir. Yeah. Just imagine that. We had, those of us who saw it, a shared experience, which we're now sharing with all of you. In Emerson's The Oversoul, he says that within us is the soul of the whole, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. And he is describing our individual connection to the whole, what he called God or the eternal one. The divine spark in each of us connects to the divinity in the world. And as our seventh principle affirms, we are a part of an interdependent web of all existence. You may have noticed in that reading, The Oversoul, that Emerson refers to the eternal one, the eternal one. The early Unitarians believed that God is one. They believed this in contrast to Trinitarian beliefs. And that's how their name came to be, Unitarian. They declared God is one. Today in UU, that understanding of the eternal one has expanded. God is one or many. God is not mandatory. nor is God prohibited. The Unitarian concept of oneness continues to resonate among us. Contemporary UUs tend to emphasize the oneness of creation more so than the oneness of God, though there are certainly among us those who still declare that God is one. In the words of our opening hymn, we would be one. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts. As we watch the recent events unfolding in the Middle East, this idea of oneness, this call for oneness is strikingly, heartbreakingly relevant. So great is our human need for unity amid our diversity. So great is our need for a new community. So great is our longing for justice, peace, and liberty. So great is our need to heal the ravages of violence, of hatred, war, of devastation. Our prayer this morning from Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt reminds us we are one global family living tenuously on the same human-impacted earth. We are one human family searching for that meaning that binds our hearts. What we do, what we believe, the values that inform our UU religion matter. They give us courage in times of tragedy. They give us courage to act morally with compassion and justice. Our history matters. It matters that we know where these ideas come from and what they mean to us today. It helps us understand who we are as a community, as a religious community, and our history can help us move forward toward the future that we dream about, toward a new community. And that is exactly what I believe this church is striving to do. This church is drawing on its history. We are drawing on our roots. We are drawing on our faith to build a church for future generations. This year, as you know, we are engaging ever more deeply in preparing for the next generation of Unitarian Universalists, of Unitarians and Universalists, the next generation and the one after it. We are embarking on a capital campaign. The campaign will enable this congregation to be more welcoming, more beautiful, more capable of living out our mission and vision. Improvements will support the intellectual and spiritual lives of those who are here now and those who are yet to come. It will strengthen the foundation upon which we grow our souls and effect peace in the world. I believe that future generations of seekers and dreamers will, like us, want to have an original relation to the universe. I believe they will want to behold God and nature face to face. They will want to have their own revelation of God and the cosmos. I believe they will want to experience a oneness with all of creation and with one another. I believe they will want us to be one global family of peace and love. What matters, too, is that there is a place for those seekers, just like there was a place for us when we were seeking. It matters that there's a spiritual community where they can grow and learn and connect. It matters that there's a religion like ours where they can come and trust their own experience of God and truth and be open. What matters is that they have a religion that will give them courage and encouragement. It matters that there will be this church, this faith, to give courage and encouragement to act boldly, thoughtfully, for good. Let us be one in building a new community. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by us. Each month, we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. For the month of October, we share the plate with Gather the Spirit for Justice. Gather the Spirit is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that brings together Allison Hill residents, area organizations, businesses, and churches to address issues of social justice and economic equity. If you wish to contribute online, please visit uchbg.org homepage for options. Your financial support and commitment matter. Please consider giving what you are able.
These gifts are generously given and gratefully received. And just as we make our financial commitments, we also recommit to our covenant to one another. Will you join me in reading our affirmation in unison? Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is our gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Please rise to your beloved neighbor.
our kindred hearts and minds be united in the search for truth and the power of love. May we honor the past and boldly go forward, committed to a liberating faith for the generations yet to come. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be.